Yo, and welcome back to another Honest Take. Today we're going to be reacting to a video that's from, let's see here. It's from the channel Fads. It's Not Just You. Nobody wants kids anymore. I am getting to the point where having kids may not be a reality. And I do really want kids, and I want to see if my reasons are the same as everyone else. As always, guys, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. I got some new merch for sale. It's my personal photography. I do concert photography. And if you want to support the channel and not just give me money, but actually have a piece of something I do and a piece of something I've created, check out my store. I get a couple pictures in there. I'll be uploading more as I try to get my concert photography career back up and running because COVID pretty much killed that. Let's jump into this, guys. Italy's national birth rate declared a national emergency. I love it. I love it. Just... what was it, 10 years ago we were all going to be eating bugs because there were too many people? It's just, it's amazing. Here we go.
Birth rate is declared a national emergency. Nearly every country is due to shrink by 2100. There's little to no doubt that there's like an ongoing fertility crisis. People are choosing to not have babies anymore, from South Korea to the United States.
Okay, graph. 1960 through 2020, number of children per woman. Oh my gosh, Japan and South Korea were having 6 kids per woman. Yo! And then France, Australia, I don't know what the OECD 38 is. If you know what that is, let me know. OECD source. Okay. Fertility rates have more than halved across the OECD. Okay, the OECD must be a collection of countries. Holy cow. 6 to 1. Oh my gosh, dude. That means one person will be taking care of 5 old people, dude. That's insane, my guy.
States to Norway to Taiwan, pretty much every rich country. And you might not think this is a problem, but it is a problem for a few reasons. The reality is that people are living longer than ever at the moment.
Wow. 85 years old, more developed regions. Wow. Oh, we're going to be stuck with the baby boomers a little bit longer, guys. I'll be a fucking baby boomer by the time they're dead. Jeez, dude. Dude, look at that quality of life. 1950, 65 years old. And now it's 85.
Moment when people start to live this long, you need new workers to replace the ones that are retiring. You need new workers to pay taxes that will eventually...
Not only that, you need the old people to train the new people how to do their jobs, because my industry that I work in is real estate, and they say for every 10 builders that are retiring, only 2 to 3 are replacing them. So you think inventory's bad right now, guys. Dude, just wait another 10 to 20 years.
Eventually fund the pensions of those who retire. And you need young people in the workforce to take care of those older people. In the 1960s, there were 6 people of working age for every retired person.
Oh my gosh, there were 6 people for every, according to the World Economic Forum. Yeah, as much as you can trust those pieces. I mean, they're always bitching about this. They're like, too much population, too much population, too much population. And now the whole economy's falling apart because there's no people, bro. The ratio is closer to 3 to 1 by 2035, expected to be 2 to 1. Holy shit, dude. I almost wonder if the World Economic Forum is purposefully trying to depopulate the world ever since they learned that AI could potentially replace 80% of the workforce. So, because the more people you have, the harder it is to control everyone. But if you're able to reduce the population by 80%, that makes controlling people a hell of a lot easier, you guys.
And by 2035, it's expected to be 2 to 1. This is one of those topics where if you ask 5 different people, you'll get 5 completely different answers as to what the reason is. People tend to have quite strong opinions. Some people might say it's a cost of living issue. Some people might say that it's to do with declining rates of religion in the world. Some people might blame women's liberation movements, for example.
I mean, those are all valid points. I think the ability to control reproductive health definitely played into it. Religion, not so much. I guess if you're looking at it in terms of getting married early because you want to have sex, I mean, that makes sense. But I mean, you know, religion's a relatively new phenomena. So, and like ancient Sumerian and all those guys always celebrated reproductive rights. I mean, like, reproduce. I mean, if you didn't, you were dead, dude. You needed huge families to like work the land and work the farms. honestly, because birth rates didn't really get messed up until like the 1970s, 1980s, and that's when birth control showed up. Like everything, I blame the pharmaceutical companies for literally everything wrong with the world.
Either way, no matter what people say, they're typically pretty certain that either their experience or their belief is the reason why on a global scale people aren't having children. I think we can do better than that, because when I see that there's a problem that is affecting Norway, the US, Taiwan, and France, I tell myself that there's got to be like a better answer that we can give, right?
I don't know, man. Cost of living is pretty grim. I think it's just an overarching sense of hopelessness. It's this unconscious desire to basically start over. Life has become, I don't know, so meaningless and so purposeless that we're just like, why would I ever want to bring a kid into this world? It's just kind of like it's like a worldwide sewer slide, because I can't say the real world, but like humanity seems to just be offing itself, if that's the right term.
Because these countries are completely different. The childcare situation, for example, in Norway is vastly different to the childcare situation in the US, which is vastly different to the UK. So I feel like we can get a better answer than just this one-line solution of, oh, it's the cost of living. I think we can do better. If you'd asked me, to be honest, like even just a couple of weeks ago, I would have put the blame squarely on the cost of housing. In fact, there's this one chart that...
No, it's not just that. I mean, that's a huge component. House prices have gone far more quickly than incomes. Okay, being a homeowner and having a relatively good job and financial stability, and I mean, I'm getting old, you guys. I ain't a young man. Like, I want kids. You know what I think it is? I think it's because families aren't celebrated anymore. It's been so demonized that look at it from 50 to 60 years ago. Someone says, hey, we're having a kid. Everybody be like, oh my gosh, that's so great. Yay, having kids. And now it's met with, what are you going to do? How are you going to make that work? Have you thought about higher education? How are they going to retire? How are they going to pay for college? It's met with such animosity and almost rage that you even did it, because I think society doesn't really view children as a net positive anymore. They're only looking at it as a liability. It's like, oh, they're just going to end up in jail, or they're going to do drugs. They're probably going to die of fentanyl. They're just going to die of suicide. What about all these things? Blah, 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 blah. You're not really in control of your child's destination anymore. And I think that's another reason people are pulling away from having families and having kids, because there are so many external forces that are just like up families' asses, dude. You can't do anything. You can't imprint anything of your life onto them. It's like you're just raising this weird being that's going to be programmed by other people. So it's like, why would you even do that? Your kid grows up and then they go to school and then they basically hate you. It's like, where's the motivation to have a kid, man? I think if you step back and let families raise their own kids, I think you'd see a lot more people having children. And yeah, I mean, there's a flip side too. It's just like, well, then kids are going to get hurt by bad parenting, and it's going to be harder for them to function because they've been brainwashed and yada, yada, yada. Do you want the birth rate to go up or do you want it to go down, you guys? It's just a matter of like, do you want the human race to keep going, or, I would rather have 9 good kids and have 1 bad one than having 10 kids by the age of 16 who just want to kill themselves because their identities have been so stripped away from them and they hate living. That doesn't help anybody.
Lives like in my head rent free. It's a chart that compares the growth of house prices to the growth of incomes in the UK. And intuitively, to me, it feels like that's why people wouldn't want to have kids.
Yeah, but dude, I mean, from 2000 to 2017, you're talking about thousands of years of social programming. I mean, what happened from 2000 to 2001? Okay, we had World Trade Center, and then we had war. All this is war. War. Trump. I'm sure he comes from Europe. I'm sure he's British, but like at the same time, man, it's just like, this is an insane time. Facebook. The rise of the tech bubble, internet. I mean, there's so much shit, dude. Like, you can't because look at it this way. Okay, mass social programming through MySpace and Facebook and all that. Everybody worried about overpopulation, and then huge crush. I mean, everybody's being brainwashed on social media. I would love to see the birth rates and all this stuff with another line of the rise of social media use. I think that's what's killing everybody.
And to a lot of people, it feels that way. But I want to challenge my intuition, and maybe we can reach a more nuanced answer as to why this is more of a global problem than necessarily a specific localized problem. For example, this is a piece of research from the US, which tried to establish what the effect of a $10,000 increase in housing would be on people's decision to have kids. Unsurprisingly, if house prices go up, it corresponds to a 2.4% drop in the decision to have kids.
So a $10,000 increase on prices, you see a 2.4% decrease in wanting to have kids. Okay, right off the bat, that doesn't make any sense because... Okay, let's hear them out.
You are renting. However, if you own your home, you actually become more likely to have kids as house prices go up. The net effect of this is that when house prices go up in the US, more people actually want to have kids, which is really counterintuitive. But there is some variance because in the UK, the effect of increasing house prices is a net decrease. And this is just one piece of evidence that immediately helps us understand that we can't just think of this problem as a one-line solution. Clearly, housing can't explain the full picture. I think the cost of having children is another huge factor that people typically fall back on when they explain the reasons why people aren't having kids. It's too expensive. However, it seems that even paying people to have kids isn't...
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me, because there are so many programs that basically pay you to have kids, and people don't accept them. I think Italy offers like 10K a kid. You know, the US wants to upgrade it to 5. The Hungarian government basically, as long as you stay there, it's like all inclusive paid, like everything is paid for you. And the more kids, the more benefits you get. And I mean, they're still struggling. It's one of the better countries, but it's not
working
great.
Very well. Taiwan has spent more than $3 billion trying to get its citizens to have more children, and it's had no success at all. In France, They've spent even more money, about 4% of their GDP, on various measures to encourage people to have children. To put this into perspective, if the US spent 4% of its GDP on family measures, that would be the equivalent of the entire defense budget. So some countries at least, are actually spending a huge amount of money on things like tax breaks, things like direct cash transfers, and things like childcare benefits to encourage people to have kids. So clearly...
But this still goes back to the same point I made earlier. All those things allow your kids to be programmed by someone else. You know, the government's your sugar daddy, and you still have to send your kids away to, you know, healthcare. I mean, not healthcare. You still have to send your kids away to daycare. Like, you're not... The whole point of having a kid is to basically get to experience childhood over again, and you get to live on. Your legacy gets to live on. And if all these entities are trying to strip you of your legacy living on, and they just want the government and the message, to quote the Critical Drinker, to live on, what's the point of having kids? Because ultimately, in the end, once you're gone, it's not even your values that live on. You know, I mean, incentivize me all you want, but at the end of the day, if my kid's not mine, you know, mentally or spiritually, like, why would I even want it in the first place?
There's a bit more to this whole situation than meets the eye initially. And I think we can maybe look at some of the research and evidence, because there is a whole body of research and evidence to engage with. And I've tried to find the best bits to share it with you. And I'm curious to hear what your opinions are on these different aspects. What I do find really interesting is like how the narrative has changed around this topic, because a couple of decades ago, overpopulation was all the rage. All of the discussion around the number of people on Earth revolved around the fact that there were too many people, and we have two people to blame.
World population, 1300, 1400, 1500, 1600. Well, the Industrial Revolution and the ability to manufacture at scale, of course the population is going to explode. But the planet can sustain like a huge amount of people. assuming that, people like Bill Gates don't throttle how much food everyone's allowed to have, as long as you can let the food supply function freely, because everybody's trying to monopolize everything, man. That's why everything's all screwed up, dude, because population becomes a problem the more control you try to force on it. If you allow everyone to be free and have freedom, I don't really see huge population being a problem.
For this. First of all, we have this dude here. His name is Thomas Malthus, and he is an 18th century economist. And he was the first major figure to really write about this idea of a population boom. He saw that the quality of life in 18th century England was dropping pretty quickly. And he said that there was just too many people and that we'd get to a point where there wouldn't be enough food.
Dude, that is literally the worst solution. So instead of being like, hey, humanity will eventually figure this out, we'll find ways to feed all these people, get cleaner water, we'll figure out the healthcare system. He was just like, nope, we're fucked. We just have to kill everyone. That's a solution. There's too many people. We need to kill them. Like, it's such a stupid way to look at the world.
Food to sustain the growing population. And a couple of decades later, another professor wrote about the same topic. His name was Paul Ehrlich, and he wrote a book called The Population Bomb. And people really believed them.
Now that is a title. Oh my gosh, dude. Do you even someone who, he's not biased at all. It's a toddler inside of a bomb, dude. While you're reading these words, 5 people, mostly children, have died of starvation and 40 more babies have been born. Dude, calm the fuck down, dude. So should we just kill the other 35 babies? It's insanity, dude.
To kind of put into perspective how scared people were of overpopulation, I want to share a quote by the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the US, who said that overpopulation could be more explosive than the atomic or hydrogen bomb, even on the other side of the world.
Yeah, same with car accidents, same with food poisoning, same with diarrhea. I mean, you could say this about anything. It's a narrative-driven way of thinking to get control over something. You're like, oh, the common cold is just as awful as the nuclear bomb. It's like, well, dude, when there's 7 billion people on the planet and, 1% of them die every year, not even 1%, it's like 0.1% of them die of cold and flu-like complications. I mean, that's like hundreds of millions of people every year. It's like, dude, you need to chill. Chill, dude. People die. It's a part of life.
China, these fears of overpopulation promoted China's decision to implement their one-child policy, the whole package of laws and regulations designed to stop Chinese people from having more than one child. If we fast forward to today, those fears were like clearly unfounded. I think most of us understand that food insecurity is a distribution problem and not an agriculture problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And instead, we've ended up in the situation where underpopulation is the problem. Whether or not enough young.
I don't know why he's laughing. This is a huge fucking problem, dude. Because the human race is basically going to be eradicated in the next 100 years. Not 100 years, but I forget what it is. It's 300 to 500 years. If we don't fix this, and it will get fixed. A guy I listen to named Tim Pool says it best. He's like, the people who don't want to have kids will eventually go away, and the only people living on the planet will be the people who want kids, and everything will balance itself out. And then 200 to 300 years later, when the population is 10 billion, we'll go through this whole cycle again. The population will decrease by 30%. It's a graph, dude. Things go up, things go down, things go up, things go down.
Young people. And I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the US specifically, because I think they've got some really interesting factors that paint a different picture of the fertility crisis to the one that you might have in your head at the moment. This is a graph of the US fertility rates, and it's the kind of graph that makes you...
Whoa, we're at we're lower than World War II levels. We're in wartime charts, man. I mean, we're about due for, but this has been going on since the 1980s, which has been wrought with war. You could look at it as peace times too. 1920 to 1940, all war. 1940 to 60, basically the Cold War. 1980s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and thousands. It's what? Vietnam, Desert Storm, Syrian war, Iraq war, Ukrainian war. Yeah, it's just so much stuff, dude. 56.1. Wow, that is not good.
You want to jump to a specific conclusion or a one-line answer as to what's going on here. But the real interesting part of this graph isn't what it looks like now. It's what it looks like when you kind of break it down by demographics. And thankfully, The Economist has done this for me. If we look at birth rate divided by age, we see some really interesting trends. Somewhat surprisingly, the fertility rate amongst women over 30 has actually been steadily rising since the 1990s. However, you might see something else that's quite interesting. Birth rates amongst 15 to 19-year-old women in the US dropped dramatically. The actual figure is
Whoa. And that's because of birth control.
77%. And they actually explain that more than half of the drop in America's total fertility rate is driven by women under 19 choosing to no longer have kids. Around a third of these births would have been unplanned, and the majority of these births would have been on low incomes as well. In the UK, we actually see a similar trend where women at age 20 are having half as many children. Unlike richer women, these young women are not going to compensate by having more kids in the future. And I actually want to take a brief second to have a little aside and talk about the fact that often the most vilified group of people are actually the most important group of people to society.
Who's vilifying young, unplanned teenage pregnancies? Those are the people we should be taking care of the most, you know?
I'm sure you've heard young single mothers described as a burden on society or as lazy. But clearly these women were actually like the backbone of the economy. It's an aspect that I feel many people don't actually think about. Obviously, it would be unreasonable to say that the reason that no one is having kids is purely because teen pregnancies are down. The economic aspect of it is clearly important. It's clearly relevant. I don't think it's a coincidence if you look in this graph that the countries that have the lowest fertility rate in Europe, countries like Italy, Spain, and Greece, are also the countries with the highest youth unemployment, the countries where young people live with their parents for the longest, and the economy is in the bin, basically. And if you just ask young adults why they're not having kids, a lot of them will say that it's simply because childcare is too expensive.
Childcare is too expensive. Yep.
What I do find interesting, though, is that the fertility crisis is one that affects the whole world. And it affects countries that spend an incredible amount of money on social programs for kids. So this is a quote by Robert Reich. If you don't know who Robert Reich is, he was US Secretary of Labor. He says that Norway spends around $30,000 per child on early childhood care. Finland spends $23,000. Germany spends $18,000. And the US spends $500 per child.
Yeah, but where is all this money coming from? So what are Norway's taxes? Because the US has relatively low taxes. So the problem is that when you're in a field like daycare, you can basically charge whatever you want because it's a necessity. So it's like, but you can't go in, you can't control price because that's not the answer either. Like, what do you do, man? I mean, the answer that pops out to me right away is if all women just exited the workforce, right? Let's just pretend what happens here. Let's forget our biases and what we think we know. In a vacuum, how do you make it so women have more time to spend with their children, alleviate the burdens of life, and can raise a family in a stress-free environment? In my smooth brain, I would have all women exit the labor force, right? So that would create twice as much demand for workers. And then all the men would just leverage their ways into higher salaries because companies have to compete for labor now. So instead of just taking all of the money two parents earn and then outsourcing that to childcare and all these people who aren't even their parents, instead of an average guy making $60,000 a year, he now makes $120,000 a year for doing the same job. I mean, how many people here would rather their wives or have the women, quote unquote, the women? And I'm not saying this is the solution. I'm just saying in a vacuum, the woman would be the childcare, the teacher. And this goes back to my original point. Your legacy would live on through your children because, I mean, you could just teach them whatever they want. I mean, whatever you want, whether they want to learn how to be a housewife or, you know, a mechanic or a tradesman or an electrician or a plumber or some kind of creative outlet. You could raise a musician, a photographer. You wouldn't just, you know what I mean? There's a freedom in the single income earner. And it would also give the power back to the family because you wouldn't have to come begging to these institutions like the government or, you know, or corporations. Because right now, the reason nobody gets paid jack diddly shit is because there's so many people looking for work. So it's like, say you've been working at Starbucks for a year. You're doing a pretty good job, right? And you go up to your manager and you're like, I want a raise because I'm the shit. I make the best latte ever. I'm worth $2 to $3 more. And your supervisor is just going to laugh at you and just be like, dude, there are literally thousands of applications sitting on my desk. Why would we ever promote you when we can just hire someone else who probably has experience in this industry and pay them less than what we pay you now? And, you know, if you cut 50% of the labor force, I don't think they'd be able to say that to you. You would have so many more bargaining chips. And I mean, it goes the other way too. If women wanted to stay in the workforce and men wanted to stay home and raise the kids, I mean, it works on the other way. You know, you just need to cut the labor force in half. There are too many people working, and corporations and the government are able to just abuse you.
Obviously, the US has a huge childcare spending problem. It just doesn't want to invest in young children. But Norway, which is spending...
That's not true, dude. It's not that people don't want to invest in children. It's that we have no say over where our tax dollars go. If a government official came to my door, right, knocks on the door, hey, what's up? I'd be like, what's up, man? I'd be like, we're going to raise your taxes by 2%, but we can guarantee you all of that money is going to go to taking care of children, and you can track what, you know, the curriculum, you have say, it's all crowdsourced. You know, it's a democracy of school. What should they be learning? You know, vote on it. It happens once a month. I'd be like, that's dope. Yeah, 2%, that's fine. But instead what happens is a mandatory, you know, you get a memo or you get a piece of paper in the mail that says, hey, taxes are going up by 3%. You have no idea where they're going, and they're probably going to end up bombing children across said ocean. You know, it's just like, especially in America, people hate paying taxes because they don't go towards anything useful. I mean, there are potholes on my road that haven't been fixed in years. You know, there are broken streetlights, you know, graffiti all over buildings. It's just like, where is the money going, dude? There are homeless encampments on every single corner. What? And my taxes, I pay 5.5 state tax, and I pay almost 30% in the other taxes, which comes out to like 35% of my tax per year. What? And I get no benefit. I get destroyed at every corner. I have to claim YouTube revenue. It's like $3 and I have to tell the government about it. It's like, give me a break, dude. Why would I ever want a kid growing up in that environment? That's the problem, man, is that I feel like this whole not having kids thing is just a middle finger to the government.
Incredible amounts on early childhood care is still seeing a below replacement birth rate. And when we talk about this problem, we tend to lump men and women in together as if their experience of having children is identical, when there are actually some pretty significant differences that can at least help us explain.
Women's earnings drop significantly after having a child. Men's don't. Yeah, because they're out of commission for like 6 months, dude. This statistic doesn't even make any sense. Men with kids income doesn't change. Women with kids does change. Are these people married? Are these people single? Are these baby mamas? Are there people that just leave their kids? How are they getting these numbers? Like, I need more context, dude. Are these people married? Are these people together? Does the men stick around? Like more information. This is a biased stat.
In some more of the trend towards choosing to not have children. And one of these big factors is the fact that women's earnings drop significantly after having a child. And that drop persists decades after they have children. This is not so much of a problem for men. Men who choose to have kids don't earn significantly less than men who don't choose to have kids. And they don't also experience a short-term drop in the amount that they earn. Gender-based differences in terms of the experience of childcare, I think are a remarkably important factor, because Ultimately, you need two people to have a child. This tracks with the work of Dr. Matthias Dupke. He's like the guy to talk about family economics. It's his like area of specialty. He talks at length about the differences between low fertility countries and ultra low fertility countries. In the countries that have the lowest levels of fertility, there is a clear trend of women taking on.
If two people are happily married, or they have a kid, and both are working, and then they decide to have a kid, the woman stops working, does that count? You know, this is agreed upon. This isn't a bad thing. You know, they come together and they say, hey, you shouldn't be working. Not you shouldn't be working, but it's best for the child to have one of us stay home. And then you both are like, yeah, that makes sense. So does that factor into that statistic? Like people who have agreed to make this decision? Now, why is work so glorified, dude? I don't get it. Who cares about fucking work? My gosh, dude. Having a kid is the greatest reward you could possibly do. You get to, I don't understand, man. The purpose of life is to make more life. I don't get it. Why is everyone so obsessed with having a stupid ass career? If I knew how to grow my own food, if I knew how to build my own house and make my own medicine, I would never work. I would go out in the woods and I would just live off the land. Why would I ever work? But I'm not self-sustaining. I don't know how to do those things because I'm an idiot American who has no skills to offer the world. And now I'm stuck. You know, man, it's just like, why would you ever want to? I don't get it. Working is the worst.
On a greater percentage of the burden of childcare. So in the really low fertility countries, the percentage of childcare duties that is taken on by women can be as high as 80%. In countries that have slightly better fertility ratios, this percentage is much closer to 50-50. There's still a huge stigma in some of these countries, particularly South Korea and Japan, where women are still expected to spend huge amounts of time at home taking care of children, but they can't survive without having a career, or they simply just want a career, which is...
Yeah, career or family, the dilemma facing women in South Korea. Despite increased government incentives, female employees are reluctant to have babies due to lack of support at work and at home. You gotta just choose one, man. I don't understand this. Why do you want a career? It breaks my heart, dude. Breaks my heart.
Also very reasonable. The decision to have kids is, in some extent, a signal of optimism, right? A signal in the belief that you'll have a good future, your kid will have.
In 1920, we took children out of the coal mines. In 2020, the most popular video game on the market is Minecraft. The children yearn for the mines. Yo, that's awesome. That's funny.
Have a good future, and the world on the whole has a good future ahead of it. And I think these disparate factors all play into a single idea of optimism about the world. There's a really good research group called Our World in Data. They're amazing. They compiled some data on how optimistic people feel about the world. And you can see that there's this concentration of rich, low fertility countries at the bottom of this graph. And I think it helps us at least explain somewhat why the countries that are even trialing just direct one-off cash payments are not seeing remarkable improvement. Giving someone a one-off payment.
Dude, offering $10,000 for a baby, that's not enough, dude. Put another zero on there and you'll get lots of babies.
Doesn't necessarily make them feel like the world is going to be a better place in the next 5, 10, 15 years. On the other hand, places like Taiwan have tried extended maternity leave, and that hasn't worked because that has actually increased the risk for women. They're going to be out of the workforce for longer and they're going to struggle to recover the income that they once had. There are these macro factors like the gender wage gap, which are kind of creating like a negative pressure, and it's not enough to balance that negative pressure. But importantly, it's also worth mentioning that a lot of the drop in fertility is actually a good thing. It represents that people have agency. People can actually choose whether or not to have children, especially women. In fact, we use the term fertility.
Whoa. He's pulling a 180 here. He just gave like 12 minutes of terrible news, and now he's like, it's all actually a good thing because freedom and choice. Even though we're all going to be gone in the next 200 to 300 years. But don't worry about it. You won't be here, so why does it matter?
Crisis. when it's not really a fertility crisis, it's a worker crisis. Governments aren't trying to create self-actualized, happy, positive individuals.
Okay.
They're trying to create meat for the grinder.
So you show me all this data and you pose no solution, and then you're just like, we're just getting thrown in the meat grinder. Sucks, doesn't it? I work at Fox. I have a career. Right there. What? Dude. Thanks, buddy. Real great. It's like what do these comments say here? Let's read some of these comments. The comfort of the rich depends upon an abundant supply of the poor. Yeah, Voltaire knew what was up. When it comes down to society needs children, people do not. Yes, people do need children, my guy. These are all people who had terrible childhoods, man. Anybody with a good childhood would be like, dude, having kids is the best. Get to have water balloon fights and play fucking tag. Take me back, dude. I'll go back. Play hide and seek with your buddies. Then go to the lake after. Fucking give me a break, dude. Living the dream. You're telling me you wouldn't want to go back to that? I want a career instead. Dude, if you had to choose a great childhood over a career, childhood. Every time, man. I'm going to leave it right there. I've been rambling on for way too long in this video. As always, guys, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you like me, I love you. And if you don't, you can fuck off. Peace.